Welcome to all of you, all of our viewers, wherever you're coming from around the world. A felicitous noonday to you. I'm your co-host and facilitator of this forum. Today's forum, the Global Leadership Mental Health Forum. This is a very momentous day. It's a very momentous and propitious in nature because today we commemorate World Mental Health Day against the backdrop of global agencies getting involved in supporting this conversation. And so, thank you for joining, all of you for joining. So, do me a favor, wherever you're coming from, wherever you are tuning in from, whether it's Africa, whether it's United States, whether it's the Caribbean, share, call your friend, call your family, call your loved ones, because joining me is a cadre of professionals, mental health professionals, and I am a firm believer in having technocrats speak to the issues that are specific to their expertise. So I'm going to, without further ado, I'm supercharged and excited for this conversation today. Without further ado, I will have the co-host, the visionary and founder, who is co-host as well, Dr. Shirley Pierre Robinson, introduce herself, followed by the other professionals on here joining me.
Well, hello and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Dr. Shirley Pierre Robertson. I'm the co-visionary and co-creator of New Dimensions Global, this mental health initiative. The visionary is my creator, God himself. He's the one responsible for this. I'm coming with over 50 years of mental health experience, as well as experience of being a pastor as well. So I thank you for coming on, and I know that we're going to have an awesome discussion today, and the intent is to take mental health to the next level. Dr. Jason.
Amazing. So, wow, thank you for that awesome introduction, Dr. Shirley. So in no specific order, we can probably introduce ourselves. I'll do it like this to save time. I will have Dr. Sheila D. Williams, and then Dr. Yves. It's going to be my wife, or Dr. Stewart, either or, Dr. Sacco. So just flow and introduce yourselves to the people.
Hello and good morning. Thank you for everyone who is tuned in. My name is Dr. Sheila D. Williams. I am the CEO and the owner of SW Consulting Services. I'm also the author of the bestseller, My Mother's Keeper. I have a master's degree in mental health counseling and a doctorate degree, a PhD in leadership and in education. I have been in the mental health field for over 20 years. I have seen pretty much everything. I have witnessed and experienced it myself, being the child of a mother who suffered from an undiagnosed and misdiagnosed mental illness. We are here to spread awareness, and we are here to evoke change. And I want to thank you for being here today.
Amazing. Go ahead, Dr. Stewart, introduce yourself to the people.
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Natasha Stewart. I have the distinct honor and privilege of being the director for the Center of Counseling and Behavioral Health at the Potter's House under the tutelage of Bishop T.D. Jakes. I am so happy to lend my voice to this global platform and erase the stigma.
I don't know what I did something.
Pardon us for that temporary technical challenge there. Okay, can we have Dr. Yves go ahead and introduce yourself to the people?
My name is Dr. Eve Abraham. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the Chancellor of Eden Christian University and also the CEO of Lifeline Center, a private practice here located in Houston, Texas.
Amen. Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Hughes. And happy birthday to you, by the way. Thank you for joining us today, taking time out of your busy schedule to grace our forum today. Olalaisi Sako, can you go ahead and introduce yourself to the people?
Hi, thank you for being here and plugging in to learn more about mental health, which is so important. And about myself, I'm the president of Viviendo en Fe. It's Christian nonprofit organization, and English is Living by Faith. I'm a mental health counselor. I have been counseling families and adolescents for about 13 years, and also training churches and professionals in the community about mental health and just the importance of being aware and connecting to services. And I am so glad that you're here with us. Thank you for joining us.
Alrighty, last but not least, my lovely wife, Jenny Pierre Renville. She will introduce herself to you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a privilege for me to be here with you to share this time with you in reference to mental health. I am a clinical mental health therapist. I'm a life coach. I actually specialize in Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And I am the CEO and founder of Life Path Consulting and also Goshen Safe Haven International, which is a non-for-profit.
Awesome. So now all of the technocrats have been introduced. I am going to say this. Well, it's a special day today because the World Health, the WHO, which is the World Health Organization, which is the health agency under the United Nations, has set aside this day every year, the 10th of October, as World Mental Health Day within the context of the SDGs. Those are the Sustainable Development Goals. Goal 3 is, those of us who are familiar with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Goal 3 is good health and well-being for everyone in the world. And so this is the context of our conversation. And I believe it's very timely that this vision has been downloaded to Dr. Pierre Robinson to raise the conversation in alignment with the SDGs and the WHO. So Dr. Shirley, talk to us briefly before we get into the global governmental aspect and implication of this vision. Talk to us about how did we get here? Give us a brief synopsis of vision and mission concerning this initiative.
This vision started, it was given to me about 22 years ago. It started, was up and running for 2 years, and I had to close it. And over the period of about 20 years, even though it was not functioning live, but it was being built upon and expanded. The vision is that what I was given, that it was time to leverage the playing field, that there was to be no more haves and have-nots, that we were to begin to look at mental health from the perspective of fairness, justice, righteousness, because looking at transparency, and also recognizing the fact that each one of us, each man was born or came here fully equipped with what is needed to take him to that place where he needed to be. So New Dimensions, what we're supposed to do with that is to work towards taking man back to where the issue occurred, so we can bring him forward and help him to understand who he is, whose he is, and what his divine purpose is here on earth. So New Dimensions Global now has, it's being inaugurated today from a global platform. It's no longer a local entity. It's now global because we realize that mental health is not, mental health issues is not a local issue, it's global. So we're building this kingdom, building this platform with a kingdom approach to look at mental health issues.
Amazing. Wow, just a very succinct overview of the vision. So I know a lot of people are tuning in from all around the world, from all different backgrounds. And in honor of World Mental Health Day, give us context, give us understanding. How does New Dimension fit into the context of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, with this day being set aside by the WHO? What is the correlation? What is the relevance? Talk to us from a governmental, a global leadership perspective. What is the significance and correlation?
Well, as leaders, you must understand that if you're looking for your nation to be prosperous, the health, the mental health of your people must be in keeping with an atmosphere, a climate that would help you to achieve the UN Sustainable Goals. It's no use saying that we have 17 US Sustainable Goals and the mental health of your people is not at the place that would help you to achieve those goals. So if the mental health of a people are not where it ought to be, you would find yourself stuck because you have all these wonderful goals. There's gender inequality. There is, education for everyone, health for everyone. And talking about health for everyone, when we talk about health, we fail to realize that mental health is health. So, and mental health only takes up a small portion of the health budget of the globe. So we have to let leaders know, if you want your country to be prosperous, if you want to meet the UN Sustainable Goals, your number one priority is the mental health of your people.
Wow, amazing. That is very powerful. I remember back at the UN, I was doing a presentation. I was part of a group of individuals, and I once said to them that there can be no sustainable goals without sustainable thinking, which is rooted in good mental health and wellness, as well as I said to an individual once that good health, mental health translates into real-time wealth. You really want wealth of a nation, this translates into real-time wealth. And I'm very pleased to see that His Excellency, the General Secretary of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, is raising awareness even at a resolution level, where now he is opening up dialogue and raising awareness and opening up dialogue and implementing this conversation at a global level, having presidents, prime ministers, kings, potentates, ambassadors being aware of mental health and wellness, being front and center. Do you want to speak to us briefly about that before we go into our line of questioning with the other professionals who are present today?
And I'm glad that you said about mental health being front and center, because mental health has been on the back burner. So it is time to give mental health a seat at the table. Where planning is concerned, when you're looking at feasibility studies, you're looking at how can we move a country? What are the developmental goals for this country? Well, you have to realize that every person, every individual in that country is there with a purpose. He has a divine purpose to play in the overall scheme of you moving your country from point A to B. You cannot, as I said before, move forward without having good mental health. So we have to bring mental health to the table. Give mental health a front and center position. Let it be known that mental health is the foundation upon which we can build structures on. If it's not, then we will be teeter-tottering, and it would seem as if we're prospering, but our people are not prospering, and our country, no matter what decisions we make, those decisions we will keep going round and round, over and over, and we would not be able to achieve our goals.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Very, very powerfully stated. And it seems like we have to go back to the foundation because, we have all these pillars of society. We know the pillars of society, and to see government being one of the main pillars of society, raising awareness, getting being involved governmentally to affect public policy. I mean, taking that leadership role. I think this will definitely translate into a global movement, and dialogue. And speaking of which, I will bring in Dr. Sheila D. Williams now, and we're talking about government involvement on a global level. Uh, can you, Dr. Williams, talk to us? We know that today is Global World Mental Health Day. We know that governments are being now summoned to join the conversation. Can you talk to us about the role and significance of leadership, public policy implementation within the context of World Mental Health Day, and how this will affect the global mental health and wellness community?
Yes, thank you. Well, when we first look at leadership, we have to acknowledge that many have been called, but few have been chosen. So we must step up to the plate because it is our privilege and our opportunity and our responsibility to address mental health. As we stated earlier, Dr. Shirley, mental health is a part of health. From a global perspective, we cannot move forward until we see mental health as a part of health. It is not a separate entity. So for our global leaders who have been charged and given this responsibility, we must realize that it is not about us. As a leader myself, I had to realize that it is not about me. So I had to come out of my comfort zone to have those conversations. So as leaders, we must get into that uncomfortable space to speak candidly, to speak transparently, to talk about the things that we may feel uncomfortable talking about. But if we are going to do our jobs, which is to take care of our people, we have to look at it from a holistic perspective. And when we look at it from a holistic perspective, we can no longer shut out mental health. Mental health is health. We are in the midst of COVID-19. This is a global pandemic. It is not just affecting one country, one city, one province. It is all over the world. This is a global pandemic that has affected us from a financial standpoint. It has affected our economy in ways that it will take years before we recover. From a global leadership perspective, we have to realize that our entire countries, the entire world has faced trauma in which we have never seen before. From a global leadership perspective, it is our responsibility to take care of our people. When we speak of leaders, we cannot leave out governmental policies, those procedures that are going to enforce and ensure that our frontline workers are taken care of, that our educators are taken care of, They are entering buildings every day in the midst of COVID-19, faced in masks and protective gear. But we're forgetting about the trauma that not only the individual who is dealing with COVID-19 and their families, we're forgetting about the trauma that is facing everyone that is impacted by that disease as well. Not only the frontline workers, but everyone else that they come in contact with. So we have to realize that it is beyond us. As leaders, we are charged with a responsibility. We have to come out of our comfort zone. We have to develop policies, and we have to implement programs. Children in schools right now have an increase in clinical depression. Our suicide rates are increasing. It is anticipated and expected that years to come, we will see that people will be suffering still from post-traumatic stress disorder. COVID-19 has affected the entire world. On top of social unrest, in addition to the financial strain that so many are facing, so much unemployment. So from a financial standpoint, it's not enough to just look at things from a financial standpoint. We have to incorporate every other aspect of those in which we have been charged to lead. Oh, Dr. Renfield, I think you're muted.
Powerful, pardon me, I was muted, yeah, there for a second. Powerful, powerful response, very loaded response. It was a loaded question, and it, you responded very well. And it seems like we have to be true to name, nature, and form. Having government, having policy implementation, having the mental health community supported at a governmental level. I think that is half of the issues that the community has really faced, because they have just been boggled down with having to educate and having to convince people that mental health translates into real-time wealth of a nation, into the community. And so we're dealing with pillars today. And if it's dealt with at the pillar level, because we have the pillars of society, I believe that the superstructure of society or fruit of society will begin to have positive benefits. Now I'm going to bring Dr. Yves in at LMFT. And Dr. Yves has been dealing with the family for years. And since we are dealing with pillars in the context of this day and the global mental health, this global mental health forum, Dr. Yves, can you talk to us about, we know that this is a day set aside for stakeholders and protagonists and practitioners and everybody to get involved, but can you talk to us on how, when government is involved, world leaders, when they are involved in the policy and decision making, how will this benefit and affect the family in a positive way?
Good morning. Thank you. Such a great question, because I am passionate about the family. I think government will need to start to put on a systemic lens regarding the family structure. The foundation, as we all know, of communities are the family. And our greatest resource is human capital. And that cannot and should not ever be minimized. When the family as a unit is healthy, it serves as a protected factor over mental health challenges. Thus, we need to, in terms of government, needs to look at it from a practical structural change that we need. Just like we're talking about policies needing to be changed, we need to look at the family structure and developing policies that needs to be changed structurally. When we look at, in response to your question, positive impacts or benefits that the government could initiate in terms of policies, we need to build and create an increased awareness for mental health to remove, it's no longer necessary for us to minimize the stigma. The stigma needs to be removed completely in order for not only our nation to be healed, but for the world to be healed. I think that we need to educate early, just like what Dr. Williams was saying. We need to educate early. For example, developing programs that will help young people to have hope for the future. We all know that when an individual, a child or adult, have hope for the future, they tend to not engage in risky behavior which will equal mental health challenges. In addition, we will need to help educate people with basic life skills, right? We promote MBAs, we promote someone who goes to school to become a medical doctor, but our society is yearning and craving for basic life skills. In addition to that, picking back on, I enjoyed the flow of this conversation, picking back on what Dr. Williams was saying about the need to help develop some form of economic development for the family. When there are economic stressors in the family, it equals to mental health challenges. So we can't just single out, look for ways to improve mental health. It has to be looked upon from a systemic lens if we're going to make any impact. Lastly, I think that it's time for us to connect mental health with the family and look at it from a perspective, as Dr. Shirley opened up to say, that it's a public health issue. If I have a mental health issue, my mental health challenge is not only going to impact my job, but it will impact my children. It will impact my friends and anyone that I interact with. So it's a public issue. It's not a singular issue. And so I think that it will be extremely helpful for us to promote some form of collaborative. You know, there's this great push now about collaborative healthcare, but collaborative healthcare without a systemic lens is really not collaborative healthcare. It's just additional resources.
Wow, very powerfully stated, Dr. Eves. I was anticipating your response, and this again, that's a loaded response. It's a very comprehensive question because once government is involved, half of the problem is over. Policies are going to change. Government will begin to help to change the narrative and all of these, all of the misunderstandings and misconceptions. And once policies are implemented, you all practitioners will not only be able to practice against the challenges, but systemically, like you've pointed out, and institutionally, there is going to be movement and traction, which sustains the family. Because if the family is off, everybody is off. The family is the foundation. To me, the primary foundation of it's not government, it's the family. Government probably would be second, or but it's the family, and so that is very, very, very timely. Now we are pressed for time, so I am going to go straight into. I'm going to bring in Dr. Odalisis Sacco, and I'm going to ask you a question that we avoid. The youths. We don't know what to do with them, and I know you're very passionate about the youths. And so, amid this pandemic, what are some of the things where leaders should be talking about to preserve the psychological longevity of our youth? I'm very concerned about our youth, as we all should be. Every global leader and parent, father, mother, whomever, wherever you find yourself in the stratum of our society, our youth, what should be the conversation, Odalisis?
Well, I want to first say that I love what Dr. Eves and Dr. Williams and Dr. Robertson said, because it's true. We need to increase education. We need to increase awareness. We need to look at priorities. And one interesting thing that we see is the focus on the medical piece, but we lose the focus on the mental health piece. And mental health affects every area of life. And we're talking about youth, and oh my goodness, Google, social media, peers, they have become the go-to for our youth to get mental health services. We even hear about youth diagnosing themselves. They go online and they say, I'm feeling this, and therefore I have this. And it has nothing to do with it, but they're self-diagnosing. They're not, they're not getting the awareness. They're not getting the services that they need. So one of the things that I strongly feel about is education. Like educating the youth is starting with the schools, putting out more information out in social media. They not only are they not only looking at social media, but they're getting information from their peers. And all of us that work with in mental health, we know that the coping skills that they learn are unhealthy because there is nothing else that is being spoken about. So when we talk about education, I'm thinking about educating the youth, but you got to start with the parents. Because you can educate, you can pour into the youth, but if the parents are still closed about mental health, if the parents are still minimizing and saying no, one of the things that we often hear is parents saying, oh, that's just because you're a teenager, you're just being a drama queen or a drama king. But it is not. We're talking about serious mental health illness, and we're talking about you're talking about in the lifespan, and as they get older, if you don't implement healthy coping skills now, if you don't allow them to be aware of how they're in their mental health condition today, then these are things that are going to be established throughout life. And and like I said at the beginning, mental health will affect every area of your life. It affects your thoughts, it affects your behavior, it affects your attitude, it affects your decisions. So just implementing education, bringing more awareness of resources available in the community, making available the crisis hotlines, like letting them know, like, hey, there are places that you can call, that you can reach out to. They have crisis counselors available to talk to you, and it is okay. It is okay to do this. It's not bad, because one of the things that we often hear is we're talking about stigma, but just the stigma about mental health and seeking help. And saying, if you're seeking to speak with a counselor, then that means that there is something seriously wrong with you. So just breaking down that stigma and normalizing mental health services. So I want to say increased education at every level, with the parents, with the kids, in the high schools, in the middle schools, having funds to be able to do this, having people that are able to come into the schools. Right now, we're listening about all these organizations that are having their funds being cut, especially when we're talking about education, and especially when we're talking about mental health. So just having these funds available, because this is important. Because one other thing that I just want to say briefly is that mental health affects physical health. So if there is a mental health, if you're dealing with depression and anxiety, it's going to affect your physical body. So you have parents going to the doctor, taking their kids to the doctor. There is nothing going on with them. And it's as simple as just getting mental health. And then one last thing that I want to share, because I know my sisters, they, oh my goodness, as I was listening to them, I was saying, wow, yes, ditto, I agree. But one last thing that I want to share is for parents, if you're a parent, if you have kids any age, I know that right now we're talking about COVID, we're talking about finances and everything that's going on, but prioritize. Get your priorities in order. And what does that mean? Increase communication. Be quick to listen, ¿verdad? Right? Be quick to listen and slow to speak. Communicate with your youth. Communicate with your kids. Establish those healthy patterns of behavior now. Don't minimize their behavior. If they're feeling something, if they're saying something, if you notice that there is a change in their life, like before they were very social and now they're isolating, or all of a sudden they don't want to to come out of the room, they're locking themselves, they're absorbed in video games. You know, bring them out, communicate with them, be intentional about connecting with them. I have parents sometimes that they even learn video games. They sit with their kids and they're like, hey, you know what are you playing? Teach me about this. That's connecting, that's communicating. We're living in such a time that it is so important for you as a parent or as a caretaker, or if you have youth that you are influential over their lives, to connect with them. Be someone that connects. Don't judge, be slow to speak, but quick to listen.
Amazing. Governmental involvement, public policy, education trickles down to parental involvement that will impact the youth. This is very necessary because the psychological longevity of the youth is very key and vital amid this pandemic, and even if we didn't have a pandemic. And so I'm going to bring in Dr. Stewart. We are pressing for time, but we are making good time, but we still press for time. Now, if you're watching wherever you are from, if you're on my page, could you share this broadcast to your friends, your family, your loved ones, anyone that you believe? I want to say thank you to those that are carrying this. I think internally it's on the EcoSoc NGO page. A couple of organizations are sharing this conversation today. So thanks to all of you who have shared this page. And I just, let's get the word out there. Let's spread the word out there. And we are going to go right in, and I'm going to bring in Dr. Stewart. Dr. Stewart, I want to ask you something about, I want to shift gears a little bit about, and I want to laser focus specifically, and I want to ask you this question from the perspective of mental health. How can world leaders help organizations? And I know you are over several organizations. You head up, I think, 4 or 5 campuses. How can world leaders help organizations to provide sound psychological leadership to survive this pandemic? What are some of the things that they should be looking at?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me, and everybody has shared such wonderful ideas. And I really wanted to touch on the topic, and we've heard this, that mental health affects every aspect of your life. And so when you're talking on a global level, and we're talking about families and we're talking about education, we cannot leave out places of employment. We have to look at these organizations and these entities, and we have to bring to the table that mental health affects all of us, whether you're the person with the diagnosis or the person living with that person. And if we just look at some stats real quick here, if we look at the World Health Organization, they say globally, mental health impacts the economy by 2.5 trillion, not million, trillion with the T, dollars in the economy from people missing days at work. The CDC estimates in the US about 200 million days are missed because of mental health. So when we look at those days, that time, that productivity, we have to begin to equip employers to help their employees. And whether that's creating a proactive workspace, meaning that we encourage good mental health in our workspaces, we destigmatize having issues or mental health or emotional problems in the workspace. And we talk about affordable health care that has a mental health component. We cannot just offer insurance for physical things. We have to offer insurance in our workplaces that cover mental health and have a reasonable deductible for people to get services and incorporate services. We also have to create healthy spaces in our work environments. We have to make sure our environments at work, just like we do with sexual harassment and things of that nature, we have to make sure that we are all inclusive and that we're providing safe places in the work atmosphere for somebody to say, yes, I'm a person with lived experience, but I'm able to do my job. And we have to make sure that we're accommodating them and that we are aware and that we have trainings and education surrounding mental health and how do we navigate this in the workspace. Most adults spend more time in their workspace than they do in their home space. So we have to include employers in this conversation to make sure, once again, that we holistically and systemically look at this issue.
Wow. Again, seems like the burden is on government. The burden to bear is on world leaders and global leaders. And so being able to implement policies and open up dialogue, yes, but implement policies and look at how the mental health will affect the bottom line economically, and being able to throw their weight in terms of public policy implementation so that we're able to be productive, and really support organizations to provide a strong level of psychological leadership. Because, you could lose a limb, you can lose an eye, you can lose an ear, but if you lose your mind, that's it. That's the most important faculty of our existence. And so we need the support from the government leaders to our organizations in creating that environment where mental health and wellness become front and center. Wow, amazing, amazing, amazing. I'm gonna bring my wife in, Jen Pierre, and we are gonna shift gears now because we are in the midst of this pandemic. And I'm gonna ask you, Miss Renville, amid this pandemic, do you believe that people are being traumatized? And if yes, what are some of the things that global leaders should be doing to help their people?
Good afternoon, everyone. I do believe that people are being traumatized during this pandemic for sure. Oftentimes, people associate trauma to a violent experience, such as sexual abuse, car accidents, or even war. However, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we are seeing qualities that qualify as traumatic experiences that are affecting somebody, that's affecting you emotionally, psychologically, and physically. All those things are being affected in a person's well-being. We are seeing signs of trauma in adults and as well as children. We are seeing those signs in the form of fear, depressed mood, anxiousness. People are keyed up, they're overwhelmed, they are feeling stressed, they are having difficulty sleeping. People are very suspicious of others. We're seeing a rise in hypervigilance. People are isolating themselves. Social isolation is such a huge thing right now. They are asking us to social distance. So we are seeing that. In our field in mental health, we are also seeing a rise in substance abuse and substance usage due to this pandemic. Also, too, we're seeing comorbid conditions like depression that coincide with trauma. Now, if trauma is left untreated, it can carry on long term, and long term, even after the COVID-19 pandemic is gone and is controlled. To answer the second part of your question, as far as how can global leaders come in and help people deal with this, I think the very first thing is that they need to recognize that this pandemic is causing stress, that it is causing levels of trauma in people's lives. There's many people out there who have lost their jobs and they do not know how they're going to make ends meet, how they're going to provide for their loved ones. So these are some of the things that are definitely causing trauma, and how they can come in and help. I believe that they can help to make mental health services more accessible, because as of right now, it is not. And just as all the other speakers have spoken, as far as fiscally, they can come on board and help to support organizations such as faith-based, non-for-profit, grassroots or organizations, help them to provide the financial support that they need. Because those organizations are essentially helping people out there who cannot afford mental health services. Also, too, I believe how they can come on board to help is in our educational system, increasing the support for school counselors and psychologists. To me, that is really huge. And also to promote education where mental health is not tabooed and stigmatized, but where it is at the forefront, where mental health is now an essential component of the healthcare industry. So there's many facets and things that I do believe that the global leaders can help people in bridging the gap to mental health and helping us with trauma.
Amazing. It seems like government, public policy, implementation, leadership, mental health and wellness are all in the same vortex today. And we can all derive benefits, distinct, stark, sharp, positive benefits from having governmental support. Dr. Shirley, I'm going to bring you right back in. And thanks to all of you for your responses. I know we're pressed for time. Very succinct, very informative, very technocratic. You all are the practitioners in your field, and so you are able to speak to the matter, not only to government, but to speak across the board. Now, Dr. Shirley, given the backdrop, mental health awareness today, World Mental Health Awareness Day, given the vision, the mission, so where do you go from here? What are your plans?
The plans are based on the fact that every 40 seconds in the global village, someone is committing suicide. Every 40 seconds. And 1 billion people in the global village is affected with a mental health problem. Plus, there are 3 million people right now in the global village who die on a yearly basis from alcohol abuse. Now, put that as a backdrop, and you're going to see the kind of responsibilities that we have. Because right now, depression is number 3 in terms of mental health illnesses in the global village. When the UN wants to meet their millennial goals in 2030, depression will be the number one issue we will be dealing with. So
and this is clinical depression we're talking about here.
Clinical depression. Okay. So what do? We need to develop a platform whereby we can bring the stakeholders together, not forgetting the religious institutions, because they play an important role in everything that we're doing.
And the religious institution is a part of it's one of the pillars of society, really.
Yes.
So really, they should be posturing themselves to engage dialogue on a global level, and vice versa, where government engaged the religious institution, which being like the first port of call, really, they are in the community. Absolutely. So are you planning on quarterly meetings, monthly meetings?
Yes.
What is the plan?
The plan is that we're meeting on a quarterly basis to have sessions like these, not just in the United States, but my vision is global, that we can take sessions like these outside of the United States in different corners of the world, that we can do that. And on a weekly basis, there's a platform that I have on Facebook that I deal again with mental health.
Which one? That's Coach Ray? I've never met him.
That we deal with mental health and spirituality. Mental health and spirituality. And I deal with the fact that it is time for the institutions to have to look at themselves as community mental health centers.
When you say institutions, could you be a little specific? Which?
The religious institutions, whatever, because I'm not going after a person's religion, but wherever you go, that place must be, the environment must be such that it's a safe place, because most people go there first to deal with their issues. So I want to bring that out there with the platform that the churches, the state, the mental health professionals, the World Bank, the UN, CARICOM, the African Union, the European Union. I want them to hear loud and clear that they need us. They need us because we are not only mental health professionals, but we are bringing something else to the table. We're bringing a kingdom approach to the table. We are mental health professionals who see man not as the world sees it, but we can look at a person and see that person in the totality of who he was created to be. So our lens, as Dr. Eves was talking about, the lens that we bring to the table, it is a lens that looks at issues from a holistic perspective. This is what I want to create. So we've developed a website. It's www.newdimensions-global.com. Global.org. And it just went live today. It just went live. So when you get a chance, I'd like you to go and take a look at that. But the imperative that we have right now is to take man back to his original space, the original plan. What was the original plan for man? This is the mandate of New Dimensions Global. Let us look at man as the way his creator sees him. And let us begin to work from the inside out and help him to strengthen him, strengthen his resolve. When he knows who he is, his self-esteem is going to rise. It doesn't matter where he lives, what his gender is, what the socioeconomic status at that time is. We know that there's tremendous potential within a person, and all they need is some help to pull that out. They just need someone to believe in them. That you may be depressed now, but your name is not depression.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Shirley. If you are joining us, from whichever platform in cyberspace, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Zoom, this is the Global Mental Health Forum, Leadership Forum, that is. And I am your co-host and facilitator of this conversation, this much needed, timely, practical, technocratic, all across the board conversation. I am Dr. Jason Renville. And I know we have just a little time left. So I'm gonna, in no specific order, Dr. Eve, what are your final thoughts before we disembark today? What are some of your final, just in a couple of seconds, what are your final thoughts because we do have some world leaders, we do have some very powerful, important stakeholders listening as we speak. What are your thoughts, finally?
Number one, I think that the initiative of this global dimension initiative is tremendous, right? So awareness. That's the highlight, right? Awareness in order to remove the stigma. We need to look at things from a different way, put on different lens, put on different eyes, because what we have been using or what we have been applying, they are cracked in the system. So let's not continue with the crack. We have the opportunity to not only put a bandage, but we could actually fix it. And we have the tools to do it. So let's go ahead and do it for the sake of society.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hughes, for taking time off of your busy schedule and joining us today. Dr. Sheila D. Williams, what are your final thoughts for us today? What will you say? What will you say to them, the people, whether it's leaders, protagonists, practitioners, just across the board?
Definitely, thank you. I would say that we are all leaders, regardless of the positions that we are in. We all hold a responsibility not only to ourselves, but to our loved ones, to our families, to our coworkers, and to our friends. So here in the US, we have the White House. So whether you are in the White House or I'm speaking to you from you are in your house, you have a responsibility for yourself and your own well-being. So I encourage you to empower yourself to take charge of your mental health, to to not be ashamed. Let's remove the stigma. I know firsthand about the stigma. Let's remove the stigma, and I will tell you that there is peace, and there is healing, there is well-being, there is hope in transparency. And once you step out of that uncomfortable space into a space where you are transparent, first with yourself, and you get the help that you need, we will see the man, we will see the woman that you were meant to be. So I encourage you, whether you are a global leader or you feel that you are not a leader at all, I encourage you to know that you are. And we are all, each and every one of us are charged with the responsibility to make sure that we are whole and that we are well.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila D. Williams, for joining us today, taking time out of your busy schedule, joining us in this Global Leadership Mental Health Forum. Dr. Natasha Stewart, what are your final thoughts to the people?
Thank you for this conversation, and that would be my final takeaway. Let it not end with this conversation when we log off from here. In your personal sphere of influence, keep this conversation going and make a commitment to do something proactive in your sphere of influence.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stewart. I know your schedule is jam-packed, for gracing us today with your presence. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for joining us. Odalisis Sako, could you give us your final thoughts before we leave today?
Just to advocate. I encourage you to advocate to increase funding for education, to increase awareness for our youth, to educate and help our youth so that they can grow into healthy adults. What you sow now, it's gonna reap a great harvest in the future. So advocate for funding for education for our youth.
Thank you so much, Odalisis. It's always a pleasure to have you on set or have you in Zoom or whatever platform. You are such a tremendous help and blessing, really, very talented young woman. And thank you for joining us today. I'm gonna ask my wife to share final thoughts before I go back to Dr. Shirley, and we will all be dismissed today. Ms. Renville.
I just want to share that mental health should be seen as a holistic approach. Let us all take care of our mental health, because truly that's what we have.
Thank you so much for coming, taking time out of your schedule as well, and joining this conversation today. If you are joining us right now, we have been discussing, we have been dialoguing, we have been looking at this mental health leadership forum within the context of World Mental Health Day today. Dr. Shirley, what are your final thoughts before we go?
My final thoughts is that we have started a movement today. And this movement will take resources. It will take our resilience and our brilliance. And I want to thank each one of you for investing your time in this kingdom-mandated platform that has been created for world change in the global village. Thank you so much.
All right. So once again, if you are now, we are about to log off. This is the Global Leadership Mental Health Forum. I'm your co-host and facilitator of this conversation today, Dr. Jason Renville. Dr. Shirley, thank you for such a very well-timed vision. Dr. Stewart, thank you for joining us today. Dr. Yeves, thank you for joining us. To Ms. Renville, thank you. Odalisis Sacco, thank you. Dr. Sheila D. Williams, thank you. And to all of our listening audience, whichever governmental agency, NGO agency, if you were just joining in from your home, thank you for gracing us with your presence today. And as Dr. Stewart said, do not let the conversation end here today. Let us lend our ear, press our ear, let us become curious, let us ask questions and put pressure, apply pressure on government and help to push this conversation to sustain this movement. Mental health is everybody's business. Mental health, there will be no sustainable development goals without sustainable thinking. Mental health and wellness translates into real time wealth and sustainability. So without further ado, thanks to everyone who has joined us, and we will see you next time this conversation convenes.